when the season starts, you're ramping up even more.
Here we go. Commissioner of Baseball, Rob Manfred. Let's listen in live.
I have to say, I am genuinely thrilled to be able to say that Major League Baseball's back, and we're going to play 162 games. I do want to start by apologizing to our fans. I know that the last few months have been difficult. There was a lot of uncertainty. At a point in time when there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, sort of the way the process of collective bargaining works sometimes, but I do apologize for it. One of the good things about collective bargaining is that it gives our players an opportunity to have input on what their workplace and the game is going to look like going forward. And they took full opportunity to provide that input during these negotiations. Our players are great athletes. I respect them, and I respect the input that we received from them during this process, and we really did learn a lot. Looking forward, I could not be more excited about the future of our game. I think we have an opportunity in front of us. I think it's an opportunity that we need to work with the players to fully seize. But I think that some of the things in the agreement are really important in that regard. I think the expanded playoff format will bring postseason baseball, and maybe even more importantly, exciting September baseball to more markets. I think the balanced schedule will be a real improvement for our fans. It'll give our fans a greater opportunity to see all of the great players in the game on a more regular basis. And maybe most important is the agreement that we reached with the MLBPA on rule changes. I love our game. Having said that, since I've been commissioner, I've talked about the need to make changes in some of our rules to enhance the entertainment value of our product for the benefit of our fans. And I think the new agreement opens an opportunity that we can work with the players to make sure that we make good rule changes that works for our fans, works for our players. I want to thank the players for their participation in the process. I look forward to seeing them again, this time on the field. I also have to acknowledge two groups. Our Labor Policy Committee, chaired by Dick Manfred, John Henry, Mark Antonaccio, Hal Steinbrenner, Jim Pohlad, Ray Davis, and Ron Fowler, did a phenomenal job, devoted lots and lots of hours to what was a long and protracted process. And then last, Dan Hallam and the labor relations staff, their dedication to making an agreement with the MLBPA and getting the game back on the field, really phenomenal. They did a great job in this negotiation.
Folks, we have microphones on both sides of the room. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll get you the microphone.
Looking at the process and the anger from the players, as Tony expressed, they feel they've been commoditized. Given the changes in the game, in the analytics of the game, and the way players are valued, and all the litigation, Bryant, service time, shortened season, how do you get past that and work with them and make sure this isn't just a truce and you work together?
Well, I hope that the players appreciate that we worked very hard to address the key concerns that they brought to the table. They talked about pay for young players. You know, we had a historic increase in the minimum salary, whole new form of compensation in terms of the bonus pool. They were worried about service time manipulation, you know, made the first ever type of agreement on that issue, never done it before. We went to a draft lottery, something that, I mean, I don't think people understand how wedded clubs historically have been to our traditional draft order. It's a really important thing to them. We made changes, went to the lottery in order to address their concerns about competitiveness. We wanted a 14-team playoff. We thought it was the best one. We compromised in order to try to address their concerns. So I hope that the process is a first step forward. I spoke to Tony after their ratification vote. I told him that I thought we had a great opportunity for the game in front of us, and told him that I hope to work with him on things that are new in the agreement, like the effort to get to the international draft, but more generally on seizing the opportunity that I think's in front of us.
To your right, Commissioner Stephanie.
Hi. You obviously a large portion of this was financial, but you've also mentioned the sort of anti-tanking measures and the anti-service time manipulation measures. So there are some elements of this deal, I guess, that are designed to sort of encourage teams to do the right thing. But it seems hard to legislate doing the right thing. Is that something you think the league can do?
You know, I think that we made changes in the agreement to address player concerns. I think almost without exception, that clubs try to do the right thing. They want to win. And, different people may have different views as to how you should be trying to win and on what time frame. But I think the things that we added to the agreement, say it again, was about addressing player concerns to the extent that we could.
I mean, this is one that I know is not a priority for you guys, but this is a press conference and we are the press, so I felt I should ask. What is the status of clubhouse access for the media for the life of this CBA? With
Mr. Hallam sitting in the back to correct me, I think there was no change.
So that means, what does that mean in terms of clubhouses? For
the pre-COVID rules are the rules that are going to apply.
Thank you.
On your right, Commissioner James.
Hey, Rob, the deal that you guys offered ahead of your deadline at 5 p.m. last week in Jupiter, it changed a lot from then until now. How much of this, to this point, could have been done sooner, I guess, to avoid compromising spring training and then having games be canceled twice?
The way the process of collective bargaining is designed to work under the statute, it's really driven by two things: time and economic leverage. And, no agreement comes together before those two things play out in a way that you find common ground. I think we made an agreement when it was possible to make an agreement.
Back on the left, Rob.
Rob, how much personal responsibility do you feel for the breakdown of labor relations in this sport? And what can you do as commissioner to improve those relations going forward?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm supposed to do is promote a good relationship with our players. I've tried to do that. I think that I have not been successful in that. I think that it begins with small steps. It's why I picked the phone up after the ratification and called Tony and expressed my desire to work with him. And it's going to be a priority of mine moving forward to try to make good on the commitment that I made to him on the phone.
We'll stay on that side of the room.
Rob, do you in the end feel it was necessary to have a lockout? Did the lockout achieve what you wanted it to?
Look, I believe that in sports, a off-season lockout is the most effective way to get to an agreement without losing games if you can't make an agreement before expiration. My strong preference is always to make an agreement before expiration. Wasn't possible here. Once it became clear we couldn't make an agreement prior to expiration, I do believe that the lockout helped move the process along. And, if we had just slid into the season, started the season without the lockout, I don't think we'd have an agreement today.
Fourth row on your right, Commissioner Hanna.
Hey, Robbins. The unions were successfully called the league's bluff several times on deadlines. Were you ever surprised at their solidarity?
I've never been surprised at the solidarity of the MLBPA. It's one of the, it may be one of the best unions in America. It has been historically, that's for sure. You know, let me say this about deadlines. I know the use of deadlines and extending deadlines and figuring out when to set them and when to back off them is part of the art of collective bargaining. And I think that it is an art form that's important in terms of making a deal. And there's more to deadlines than just saying this is a deadline and I'm never going to move it.
Sorry, that's just to say there's also obviously an art to not taking a deadline seriously. Did they outmaneuver you?
You know, look, my answer to that is we got an agreement that we're happy with. Upon looking back at it, I think we used deadlines effectively to move the process at points in time when it needed to move. And, you know, who outflanked who? My view is there's only one win, and that's getting an agreement, and we got one.
Second row on your left, Dave.
Rob, you mentioned what the goal for the collective bargain is to find common ground for the two sides, and that's how you explained how long it took. What it kind of showed, I think, was how much space that you guys had to bridge, how far apart you guys were, whether it was ideologically, whether it was financially. Does the league have a lot of work to do to get on the better side of players or to work together better? You know, the gap has been bridged now. You got the CBA done. But it seems like there's still, you know, even in the vote with the players, you know, there was a substantial amount that voted against this deal.
Yeah, I think that we're committed to the idea of working hard during the term of the agreement, maybe to more regularly get to the bottom of player concerns so that they don't build up. I mean, this negotiation, we started a long way apart. In case anyone missed the memo, they did come with a very, very broad agenda for change. And, you know, no, I mean, they're entitled. That's it. That's what the process is about. But when someone starts that broad, it usually takes a little more time to find common ground.
First row on your left, Morley.
Rob, yourself, you just said that you have failed maybe in your goal of having an excellent relationship with your players. Why that failure, and what can you do from now on to improve that specifically? The relationship with the players, who obviously there's a lot of animosity out there.
Yeah, look, I do believe, I hope, that the players will see the effort we made to address their concerns in this agreement as an olive branch in terms of building a better relationship. We built some processes into this agreement where we're going to be interacting more regularly with players on topics like the international draft and rule changes. I think those opportunities for positive interaction help to build a better relationship.
Anything else? James, on your right.
I guess one of the players' biggest concerns with, you know, what was going on in the process, like the luxury tax thresholds, they argued that it was not, you know, the growth of that, for example, has not kept pace with league revenues. I mean, what is your, I guess, response to their concerns about their overall compensation not keeping up with what clubs are earning?
Look, I think that the MLBPA historically has wanted a market-based system. Over, you know, multiple negotiations, that's been a primary objective of theirs. Markets produce market results, and I think that the changes that were made in this agreement moved dramatically in their direction on topics like the CBT threshold, and I think you'll probably see a little different market results as a result of the changes.
All right, thanks everybody. We appreciate your being here.
All right, Commissioner of Baseball, Rob Manfred. Again, owners ratifying the CBA 30-0 after the players earlier in the day voted in favor of the latest collective bargaining agreement. And so players can report to spring training March 13th. Today is March 10th. Spring training games begin on the 18th, opening day April 7th. April 15th is Jackie Robinson Day, again, 75-year anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color line in Major League Baseball, 1947. And we were hoping that maybe we heard even yesterday, April 14th. Now it's starting even a week earlier, which did come up in that conversation, fellas, as far as deadlines being put out there. At a certain point, deadlines are artificial. We're in March, and you can't get 162 in. And it seemed to be, to me anyway, we were right on the cusp of being able to physically do it without doing 7-inning doubleheaders or that sort of thing.
Yeah, an agent said to me a few days ago, Rob Manfred doesn't have to make any more announcements. The calendar is screaming about the possible and the impossible, unless you're going to play 27-inning doubleheaders, which nobody wants to do. So it was clear we kind of get this settled now, or we deal with the ugliness, which is lost paycheck for players, as important, lost service time. It's the lifeblood of a player. It's about arbitration and free agency and their pension. So that was a Thelma and Louise off the cliff that we didn't want to do. Another analogy, Billy. And we avoided that. We avoided that. It's been bad.
Right.
But it could have been so much worse 48, 72 hours from now. So at least that was avoided.
Look, the commissioner going on at the very start of his remarks, excited about the future of the game. You expect that, but also made a point of emphasis in working with the players and having an opportunity to make rule changes together. Could this be a part of, again, the players and ownership working together, where kind of getting the past, the acrimony from decades, getting past that and working together on some of these things?
Well, if you listen to Rob's press conference, there weren't many softballs thrown in that press conference. There were some really hard questions. I thought he came across with incredible humility. I think he took accountability for whatever role he played in the acrimony. And by making the call to Tony Clark, I think it starts with an olive branch. Now, you need two people to do that. Both those leadership group have to do an autopsy and say, okay, what could we have done better to avoid this situation? But certainly right there is a good start.
And also, I just want to throw in that, again, the commissioner was saying that, with the lockout usually brings results. The lockout very unpopular with the players.
Sure.
And Tony Clark, the head of the Players Association, had said that this lockout was unnecessary. Your take on the lockout and actually getting a deal done just in time?
Well, we wonder if it was unnecessary, because the last time that there was the work stoppage was 1994. The players went on strike, and it was in August. So if nothing goes on and you're playing status quo, the players would have had the right or the chance to maybe strike. So we don't know. The good news is we don't have to talk about what ifs anymore. We have to figure out, okay, how do we get the 162 in? What is that going to look like? We've added teams to the postseason. So if we look forward at this point on and we continue to have both sides talking with each other, let's avoid this kind of stuff in the future.
In fact, I want to throw in, too, that if I thought anything in the last few days, having been up on this set, is that the maneuvering being done from Major League Baseball's side, I thought was rather sharp. In fact, especially with the draft, the international draft being thrown in there, and the Players Association kind of saying, no, this is very important to us, at least elevating an importance in a single day. And they said, okay, here you go. Here's two choices. So I didn't see an outmaneuvering over the last few days.
I think that was a brutal question. I personally think the Players Association wasn't prepared for the international draft discussion. I don't think they really understood. It's what is it? Latin American makes up 30 to 40% of our game. I don't think they really understood the issues and how emotionally connected their players were to that particular issue. So I don't know if they knew how to respond. I think Major League Baseball gave them a good out.
Right. And it flared up, but it didn't blow it up because baseball came back.
Very quickly to say, okay, we're reading the same, even not telling us, we're reading what you're going through right now, so we're going to make this easy on you. They didn't have to do that.
And they presented three options, said, go, what's important to you? Pick one of those options. And that kind of got us to the next day, which is today, which they got a deal.
Not just a good maneuver. I actually think a good outcome. I wouldn't want to rush an international draft. There's all kinds of intricacies to this. I don't think we fully appreciate, our people being exploited there or getting an opportunity. Like, they might tell us something different than what our perception of it is.
The difference is, Joel, I think the owners were prepared because this is an issue they've been studying for years. Now,
no, I'm agreeing with you.
I don't think the player side was prepared to really either trust the information that they were given that they wanted to do their own due diligence, but I do think it caught them by surprise a little bit.
And we know that change in our sport is problematic. There's real whatever. And so I don't think for players who have come from that part of the world, telling them we're going to have this big change without them being prepared to handle it, like, now you have some time to explain why we're doing it, how it could be economically better.
Or they may have some input the way to do it better, too.
Correct. And so that's why I think it's better. But I just want to your point, you said something interesting about, like, he made a call, Rob Manfred made a call to Tony Clark. I am reminded right now, I think about it, after every election, the loser concedes and calls the winner, and there's this let's work together. And in politics, that never happens. That's the good moment for the next 4 to 6 years, is like, hey, let's work together and be Americans. So I hope we have a better outcome than that. And I will say, you were talking about humility. I thought the most interesting thing that Rob Manfred said was that he said, I think I have not been successful at that, which is making the players believe he's a fan of the game, making the players believe that he cares about their outcomes, health, spirit, money, etc. And I do think it's incumbent upon him, maybe during the term of this, to get players to believe it, because I think if they believe it, then all that other stuff becomes easier, where we have trust and things begin to work. I thought that was an interesting moment that I don't know that I've ever heard him say publicly before.
You know what?
That there's been failure in that
But
area.
I do believe that he's become a lightning rod for so many. It's like a tentacle. To put all of the mistrust on his lap, I mean, that's like...
Well, we had boogeymen on both sides, right? We had Scott Boras on one side, and we had Rob on the other side.
Teams are still going to value players the way they do. That's the disconnect I'm not smart enough to figure out, because teams look at it, it's like it's a hedge fund, and they're going to trade accordingly based upon when value's high or value's low. To the players, it's not a hedge fund. It's their livelihood. And they want to be valued in a different way that the game is going to value it. I don't know what the commissioner can necessarily do about that. And that's an issue that still has to be resolved within the industry.
That's been a dynamic within the game that we've talked about. We have a show devoted to it, the show MLB Now That We Do every day. Is that's swept through. It has nothing to do with the commissioner and players being commoditized, but they've always had a monetary value, and it's changed. But the questions keep popping up. What are you going to do about this, and analytics and diminishing players? Like, that's not how it works, but there are other things that can be addressed. Just to get into some of the other details, in the last few days, Bill, we saw ownership did make moves. Now, look, the free agency system is still in place. Right. The collective, the luxury tax system is still in place. Those are wins for ownership. But